This is the beginning of page 140. Then I will do them for her, he said quietly. I don't want a wife to wait on me. For Mercy, just to be what she is, I could do enough to make up for it. Then tell her tonight, John, she urged, remembering the longing in Mercy's eyes. Perhaps, he answered again. We shall see. Walking home past Meeting House Square, Kit could hardly keep from dancing. She wanted to shout and sing. Mercy and John Holbrook. How right, how exactly unbelievably right. How could she keep from telling someone? They must see that she was bursting with excitement. Judith would surely... Oh, Judith! Her jubilant feet came to a halt. How could she have forgotten? Ought she to have said something to John? Warned him somehow? No, she could hardly have done that. In fairness to Judith, he was so completely unaware, so serious and shy, as Judith herself had said, so wrapped in his books and his dreams of Mercy that he had never even noticed that Judith had set her cap for him. What was this something that Judith was so sure was so going to happen tonight? What sort of scheme did Judith have up her sleeve? Well, if he doesn't go to the husking bee, nothing can happen, she thought practically. And who knows, if he's there with Mercy, oh dear, Judith is going to mind terribly. But she is proud. She'll put her nose in the air and pretend she never had any such idea in her head, and she'll get over it. I know, because John isn't really suitable for Judith. If only he will speak tonight. Judith lingered exasperatingly in front of the little mirror that evening. She was wearing the new blue wool dress from the first time, with a snowy white collar and deep cuffs, and she had never looked lovelier. Her eyes were deep blue in the candlelight, the clear white of her skin flushed with a secret excitement. Kit fidgeted impatiently. It didn't matter how she looked. William was waiting already, and they must all get away quickly before John arrived. If only Aunt Rachel and Uncle Matthew could find something to do, and Mercy could be sitting alone in the firelight. They were too late, however. John Holbrook stepped inside the door just as the two girls rustled down the stairs, and his eyes were lively with admiration as he waited, with a courtly bow, to let them go ahead of him into the kitchen. Judith tipped her head and smiled up at him provocatively. Rachel put aside her work, and even Matthew came to the door to see the young folks off. I'm so glad you've come, Judith dimpled. Now we can walk together. I'm not going to the husking, John told her, smiling. I think I shall stay here and visit with Mercy instead. But they're all expecting you. Mercy doesn't mind, do you, Mercy? John shook his head, still smiling. There was a reflection of Judith's excitement in his own pale face. I think I shall stay here, he insisted. There is something I want to speak to your father about. His words had taken breathtaking effects. Judith took a step backward, one hand at her throat, and a wave of scarlet spread from white collar to her black curls. Tonight, she whispered in unbelief. Then suddenly joy came flooding past her doubt and restraint. Oh, Father, she cried impetuously, he doesn't need to miss the husking, does he? You know what he wants to ask. Say yes now, as we can go to the party together. Matthew Wood was bewildered. Why, daughter, he rebuked her. What sort of talk is this? Shameless talk, and I don't care, laughed Judith, tossing back her black curls. Oh, Father, you must have guessed. John doesn't need to tell you. Such radiance was irresistible. Matthew Wood's stern features softened, and when he turned to John, he was actually smiling. If you will come courting such a headstrong, brazen girl, he said indulgently, then I can only give you my blessing. Perhaps you can teach her some meekness. John stood dumbfounded, his pale face shocked, completely colorless. He seemed totally unable to collect his wits. Tell them, urged Kit, silently and desperately. You've got to say something, John, right away. And if he heard her, John opened his white lips and made a hoarse "Sir, he attempted. Then, still incredulous, he looked back at Judith. Every trace of pride and haughtiness was wiped from her face. Such utter happiness and trust shone from those blue eyes that John faltered, and in the moment of hesitation he was lost. William's heavy hand descended on his shoulder. Aunt Rachel held out both hands to him with tears in her eyes. Then Mercy came slowly from her hearth, her head up, her great eyes clear and lustrous. I am so glad for you both, she said warmly. Only Kit could say nothing. Perhaps I dreamed it, she thought, watching Mercy. But she knew she had not dreamed the love in Mercy's eyes that summer evening. Now no one but herself would ever know. She had counted on Judith's pride, but Mercy did not have Judith's pride. It was something much stronger than pride that upheld her. Presently the four set out together into the still, frosty twilight. Judith took John's arm confidently, still carried quite beyond constraint on her wave of happiness. You'll never know, she chattered. You saved me from being the most outrageous hussy, John. I had a scheme. I'm not sure I would have dared, actually, but now—" "Now what?" Kit asked, walking behind them. She ached with her own stifled protest. "He can't do this," she told herself over and over, but she knew that he could. John understood Mercy. He knew that she had never been in her life reached her hand for so much as a crust of bread that Judith might want. If he should hurt Judith now, Kit knew Mercy would never forgive either him or herself. Lost in her own thoughts, Kit barely noticed that William's dignified pace was even more deliberate than usual. They had dropped some distance behind the others, and a purposeful hand grasped her own elbow. "Wait a moment, Kit," said William. "Let me go ahead. I want to talk to you." The quiet resolution in his voice penetrated her racing thoughts. Reluctantly she gave him a corner of her attention. The intent look in his eyes, even in the waiting light, warned her of what was coming. Oh no, not after all that had happened. She was tempted to run off for the shelter of the fireside and Mercy. "I didn't mean to speak tonight," William said, "but watching those two, don't you envy them their happiness, Kit?" "I can't bear it," she thought in panic. "Not tonight." The last two words escaped her into a half-whisper. William took them literally. "Tomorrow, then. Let me speak to your uncle. You won't need to help me out," he added with unwonted humour. I am capable of speaking for myself." Kit stood shivering in the damp twilight. "This silk dress is not warm enough for New England," she thought irreverently. Then she made an effort to gather her forces. William's question was not unexpected after all. She had thought that her answer was all ready. "Please, William," she whispered, "don't speak to him yet." William looked down at her, perplexed. "Why not? Don't you want to marry me, Kit?" She hesitated. "I had not thought of getting married so soon. Judith is just 16, he reminded her. "I know, but I'm still a stranger, William. There are so many things I have to learn." "That's true," he agreed. He was a silent moment. "I won't hurry you, Kit," he said reasonably. "The house can't be finished before spring anyway. I'll wait for your answer." What her answer would be he seemed to have not the slightest doubt, and they walked on. His hand remained at her elbow with a new possessiveness. Laughter spilled from the open door. The great barn was glowing with lanterns swinging from the hand-hewn timbers. There was a fragrance of the new hay and the warm, reassuring smell of cattle. The gaily dressed young people sat in a circle around a vast mound of silk-tasseled corn, and already the husking had begun. Shouts of welcome greeted the newcomers, and the circle shifted to make room for them. To Kit's surprise, the husking was fun, enlivening by singing, wagers, and jokes that seemed uproariously funny. She was astonished. Wethersfield was not always a dull, solemn place. Had her uncle ever been to husking, she wondered? All at once a new shout went up. Judith sat at the half-shucked ear of corn in her lap, and from the ruffled silk peeped bright orange-red kernels. Judith laughed and tossed her head with all her old arrogance. "I haven't any need for a thing like that," she said triumphantly. What am I offering for it?" Without waiting for an answer, she tossed it straight the circle into William's hands. There were a few quick giggles, a hushed curiosity. Kit sat helpless, her cheeks on fire, and then the laughter and the cheering left her giddy as William stepped resolutely forward to claim his forfeit. Okay, that's the end of chapter 13. We're going to begin on chapter 14, which is still on page 146.